Hi, Len Edgerly here from Ocean Park, Maine. Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles. Today is October 16th, 2020, episode 637. You're going to hear Steven Levy for the interview this week, talking about the Antitrust report, which the majority on the Antitrust subcommittee released last week in Congress. Also, we're going to find out how come the Kindle edition of his latest book, Facebook, The Inside Story, costs so much. For the news, we'll talk about Prime Day, take a look back at that, and I'm going to give you my first impressions of the Remarkable 2 tablet, which arrived today. That's an e-ink tablet. I've been using the original Remarkable one, and this one's really quite a bit better. I'll tell you why. You'll also hear from Darlene in the Tech Tip, which she's not a frequent guest in the Tech Tips, but she has been what I think of as involved in a virtual move. We've been getting our stuff ready to move out of the place in Denver before selling it, and she came up with a use of the Echo Show for that, which really made everything possible at a time when we were despairing which was the way forward. Let's get started. Prime Day has come and gone, October 13th and 14th, delayed from the usual summer date because of the pandemic. There was an article today in the Wall Street Journal by Sebastian Herrera, which covered the highlights of it. Overall spending at Amazon.com was up 36% in the United States during Prime Day compared with last year's Prime Day. Now, last year, Prime Day sales had gone up more than that, 42% increase compared to 2018, but still 36% increase in the midst of the pandemic. It shows you how much shopping is shifting online because of the pandemic. Those numbers, by the way, are estimates by Edison Trends. Amazon wasn't actually saying how much their own sales were up, but they did release third-party business sales, and that, I think, when you hear about the conversation about antitrust, you'll understand why they're emphasizing how extensive the third-party business is. Just during the 2-day Prime Day sale, third-party businesses sold more than $3.5 billion worth of stuff on Amazon, and that was a 60% increase from last year. Biggest movers were iRobot Roomba. I've already got one of those, so I wasn't tempted to get that. And something I didn't see during the sale, but they list it as one of the hot items. I'm always interested in what the hot items are on Prime Day or Black Friday. And this is a game called Kids Against Maturity, and it's a card game. It's not digital. It costs $30 now. It was probably discounted more on Prime Day. And it's 500 question and answer cards. Each player gets 10 white answer cards, and then everybody takes turns asking a blue question card. And you have these funny answers, and you lay down your answer, and then everything's hilarious, it looks like, just from some of the questions. And the person who asked the question on the blue card decides who had the best answer. Just in looking at some of the questions, there's some humor that's a little bawdy. It's recommended for kids 8 and up, so it's not adult or anything like that. But anyway, a lot of people liked it, and it might be a fun thing to get for if you have kids who are 8 or over. Looking ahead to the holiday season, this article says that more than half of customers in a survey of 2,000 shoppers say they plan to primarily shop online. That's twice as high a proportion as last year, understandable because of the pandemic. Many retailers plan to close on Thanksgiving, and they're offering Black Friday deals online in November and December to reduce crowds at the stores. Amazon's e-commerce market share fell 1.5% compared with last year, but there were small gains by Walmart, Target, and Best Buy. Well, I had fun on Prime Day myself. I get the usual eclectic bunch of stuff, including one session at 2 a.m. sitting on the side of the bed tapping on my iPhone. I bought a Waco Sweets Nintendo Switch game that you're sort of playing somebody who's making pastries. I bought a meat thermometer, a 2 Wi-Fi outlet extender plugs with Alexa. I'm not sure what they're going to use them for, but I'll find something. A Blue Wind bike seat, comfortable with memory foam. My rear gets a little tired on the long bike rides up here. A comfy, oversized wearable blanket, which I saw my daughter Rue wearing down in Lexington. I got the red one. They had a real deal on the Echo Show, the smallest of the Echoes. I think it was about half price, so I grabbed one of those for maybe the bedside table here in the cottage. A Good Threads soft cotton beanie, burgundy. And 16 Pilot Frixion pens for my Rocketbook, 10 fine liner color. This sounds like a partridge in a pear tree, doesn't it? 1 pound of unsalted almonds. That goes with my low-carb diet that I'm using the Halo band for. A 1-foot USB cable, USB-C cable for charging stuff, and an Amazon Essentials Red Buffalo plaid flannel shirt. Plus a 32-inch TV, so we get a Fire TV downstairs instead of a Roku, which makes it difficult to navigate all the Amazon stuff. Lots of fun on Prime Day. I love it. Now, I'm looking at my notes here on the Remarkable 2 tablet, which arrived, and it's been in the works for quite a while. I must have ordered it 6 months ago, so I finally got into a delivery cycle with it. It's 30% thinner than the Remarkable 1, which is a tablet I've been using for a while. I use the tablet for thinking, and that's how they're pitching it, and I think it really does make sense because there's something about the black and white. The feel of the pencil feels like a pencil. It's not like the Apple Pencil on the glass of the iPad. There's no color, there's no Twitter, and I have perhaps just trained myself that when I have something I have to figure out, like something to do with Darlene's health insurance or some financial thing for my dad, when I pick up this tablet, I'm focusing my mind on a project, and I'm writing notes, and I'm just always more organized. And we'll get to the price of this thing, and you can figure out how much that's worth, but it really does have that use. And this new version of it, I'm buying it because I like to keep in touch with this stuff, but if you have thought that you might want to try one of these Remarkable tablets, this new update is really pretty stunning. It's slim. It has a nicer design. There's only one physical button. The original one has a forward button, back button, and a home button. On this, the home screen is just always there, and you swipe left or right to go to the next page or the previous page. It's faster. The responsiveness is noticeable. Now, the price is $399, and then if you buy a marker, it's extra. If you get a marker that's just the standard one, which I have, which is fine, $49. And then if you get a case, that's in addition to it. So $399 for the tablet, $49 for the marker. If you went for the cheapest folio or the cover for it, that's $69. So the whole thing is $517, and that's not going for the premium leather case, which I got, which I really love. It's $149 for that, and it kind of opens up like a book, and it gives it great protection, and the pencil is magnetic and clasps to it, so it makes it harder to lose. By comparison, you can buy a 32-gigabyte iPad for $329. So this thing is $70 more than an iPad. But that's the question. What's it worth to have something that helps you think better? I think that's kind of where this shakes out. It's the second generation Canvas display, they're calling it. That's the e-ink display, twice as fast, and it reduces latency to 21 milliseconds. So as you draw your pencil across it just feels like it's nearly instantaneous. It has a more attractive case. It's anodized aluminum. It's one of these things, you pick up a bit of technology, an iPad, something like this. There's some things which you think, this is kind of clunky. Maybe they'll update it. But this thing has really come into its own as a really attractive and really usable unit. They started shipping in August, and if you order one now, the current batch for delivery is December. Remarkable Tablet 2. I'm going to see if I can get somebody from that company on for an interview. They're based in Norway, so it's going to be a challenge. For the tech tip this week, I'm going to ask for help from Darlene because she's the one that was mainly involved in our experience with virtual movers in Denver. That's the way I think of them. To give you a little background, we had planned to fly out to Denver to organize the packing up of our stuff because we're selling our condo in downtown Denver. But after hearing from Jerry Riddle and then elsewhere about the risk of flying in the time of COVID, we just decided it wasn't worth it. So Darlene found an outfit in Boulder named BeFreeOrganizing.com, and you were pretty happy with how it worked. How did we do it?
So they weren't movers, they were organizers. We used the Echo Show, and we went through the house in some cases, like with my closet, piece of clothing by piece of clothing, and they would hold it up and I would say yes or no or answer questions and stuff. And then they would put it in the appropriate pile. They had a table set up with the Echo Show on it, and this wonderful woman, Callie, was manning the Echo Show. There were people bringing her things, and then when I would say it goes here or it goes there, there was somebody else on the other end taking it and putting it in whatever correct pile it was. We did this for several days.
Yeah, you were on the show like all day long.
Yeah, well, usually about 6 hours a day, and then in the meantime, they were packing everything into the appropriate boxes, and they were donating, taking things out to have donated, having, paint disposed of.
Right.
It went on, and they were absolutely fantastic. I cannot tell you what. They were just like angels.
Yeah. Because, otherwise we would have just been shooting in the dark here, trying to get our whole home there moved and not being there while it happened. We were lucky because we had Echo Shows at the apartment that were hooked up to the internet, so all I had to do was say, drop in on Darlene, and it showed right up into your studio, and then we had another one in the other room.
Or in the kitchen. They would say drop it into the kitchen, and then that one then we could do part of the house there. And it was fabulous. And they had never worked with the Echo Show, and at first they were talking about sending pictures. It just couldn't even have been done by sending pictures. It worked so well. And then a friend of mine, a quilting friend of mine, came in and spent like a 10 or 12-hour day on the Echo Show, just going through my fabric piece by piece to see, because in our situation, we were downsizing. We were getting rid of a lot of stuff. And so we didn't want everything just packed up and sent to Cambridge and then had a garage full of boxes that would have taken us the next 6 months or longer to go through. And my goal was to bring 10%, only 10% of my studio, 10% of my clothes, 10% of, we brought even less than 10% of the household stuff.
Right. And then some of the stuff we were sending up to Bozeman for our niece and nephew.
Right. And so then that stuff had to have been, it had to, yes. And then a lot of my quilting stuff had to be donated. And so, it was a really long process, but because of the Echo Show, and because of these wonderful people, it just went like clockwork. And we could not have done as good a job ourselves if we would have been there. No. And we would have been exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
And all the people who were coming in to help us were all being affected by COVID and exposed, and none of them could come. And it just would have been a nightmare. Yeah. I worried about it for weeks before this happened. And then I'll never forget when I got that guy on the phone and I said, I just have to know if you can help me do this. And he said, I've got your back.
Well, so they had everything boxed up, and the quote, real movers showed up yesterday and today.
Right.
And because everything was so well organized, they just took it down to the trucks, and I don't think it took that long because of all the work that Jason and his crew had done.
Right. And Jason had worked with Bailey's Moving before, and so they worked really smoothly together. And this is all in a high rise where they had to bring things down in a service elevator, and they had to deal with the concierge and all the problems of taking things out of a high rise building in downtown Denver. And it just, nobody was mad at me. It's like the concierge at one point just said to me, "Darlene, don't worry. Jason and I've got it handled." I was like, okay.
I think in addition to being organized, Jason's emotional intelligence was off the chart.
Off the
seemed
charts.
Like everybody he had to...
Everyone loved him.
Yeah. They wanted to help him.
Yeah. He was just...
I mean, I felt that way. Even across the screen, I said, well, Jason, do you need any help from me?
And Callie was the same way,
Yeah.
And they, like, one thing got mixed up. Some chair didn't, went into the donate pile, and someone ended up with it, and it wasn't supposed to go there. And he was just like, "Well, Darlene, we could go and we can get it back." I said, "No, I don't think so. We're going to let that one go."
All right. That one's gone.
It was just, it was amazing. Yeah, technology, you can really see how technology is moving us ahead in interesting ways.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have a business, or they would be doing this for people in different situations, but to be having somebody 2 time zones away,
right,
and have it be that convenient. And, you could have used a FaceTime on a phone, but you would have had to hold the phone. And
it would have been very awkward.
The quality of we get a bigger screen this way, and I think it, just for the amount of hours that you were doing it, that Echo Show is really the right piece of equipment.
Yes. Absolutely.
And if we'd had the new Echo Show that's coming out, it would have automatically followed them around the room. It would have oriented itself, and you could have aimed the Echo Show at one part of the room versus the other remotely.
Yeah, that would have been interesting, too.
We'll do that for the next time we move.
That's right.
Which is like never.
Yeah, it's true. And you were the one that came up with it. You said, "Oh, no, we'll use the Echo Shows." And
yeah, he said confidently. When I first dropped in after having not been there for 7 months, I think, gosh, I sure hope the internet's still on, and I sure hope this works.
Hope that I can get this going. Huh?
Worked like a charm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My guest this week, Steven Levy, has been called the founding father of technology journalism, the dean of tech writers, and America's premier technology journalist, among other plaudits. Currently, he is Wired Magazine's editor-at-large, and for 12 years, he was senior editor and chief technology writer at Newsweek magazine. His most recent book is Facebook, The Inside Story, published in February by Blue Rider Press. That's an imprint of Penguin Random House. I reached out to Steven after reading in his weekly plain text newsletter how he understands the implications of the Congressional Subcommittee's recently released 450-page antitrust report. On Wednesday, October 14th, we connected by Skype. He was in the Berkshires, where New England's fall foliage is just past peak this week, and I was here in Ocean Park. Here is our conversation. In March, when we were talking about your Facebook book, we talked about antitrust briefly, and at that point you said an interesting thing. You said, as opposed to second guessing a company like Facebook on things that it had done bad, it might have been better to ask what was the landscape that allowed Facebook to cause such problems on its platform, and to ask kind of underlying questions like, what do people deserve in terms of protections from big companies or small companies regarding their data. Given that we've now been through the hearings and seen the report, do you still sort of have that basic philosophical approach that people are chasing a horse that's already out of the barn, and that going forward we ought to just recalibrate the way we think about regulating these companies?
Yeah, totally. I actually wrote my newsletter about this last week, looking at the House report. It's very critical of the tech companies. They've done their homework, and I think the criticism, almost all of it is justified. But the things that they're singling out these tech companies for represent the kind of behavior that we've seen in many industries over the past couple decades. And by choosing 4 big tech companies, I think it mistakenly gives the impression that tech is the problem and not the way we do business, not the way we handle antitrust, not the way we regard big mergers between companies, or big acquisitions from very rich companies buying, relatively smaller companies, but in multi-billion-dollar deals. It represents the way we treat market abuses by big companies. So, for instance, they single out Amazon. They say, well, look at this. Amazon gives favorable position to their house brands on their website. Well, that's something that we allow Walmart to do. We allow any big supermarket chain, Costco, to do when they have their house brands, and they put them in the prominent positions on their shelves. So, if we have a problem with this, the problem isn't big tech. It's the way we regulate or don't regulate our big industries.
Is there any way to have a meaningful and understandable and legislatable new set of rules about misuse of our data? Because that seems central to, all four companies that are in the hot seat here, each being accused of misusing our data in ways that hurt competition. But how do you even come up with concepts or theories that are actionable and that you could put into laws so that if the companies broke the rules, you'd send them to prison? I mean, they'd know what the rules were, and then they would just have to abide by them. But what might those rules look like?
Well, right now the rules are incredibly loose. I don't think it's right that it's nearly impossible to navigate the internet and not be tracked. You could turn on all the do not tracks you want, and they're going to be tracking you. Just flashing, these little dialogue boxes to you saying, the complicated language, or look at our terms of service that you're never going to look at. That's a failure. That's a failure. The default should be you're not tracked. It's up to these companies to convince you in clear language why it is to your benefit to allow them to collect your data. And then you would say, okay, I'm in with that. And I think that we have not done any, the legislators and the regulators have not done any serious thinking about that. They haven't made any attempts to stop that. Europe has given it more thought, but as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a bust because it just ends in these dialogue boxes. We really have to set something up which is consumer centric, and the companies have to follow that. And if a business plan that the companies have been pursuing happens to rely on a routine misappropriation or abuse of personal data, well, that business plan has to change. That's just the facts.
That seems reasonable to me, but in a problem that I see, thinking of my own behavior, I generally think it's bad that everybody's tracking me. But if I had to spend any amount of time on any website, starting from zero and going through some kind of, all right, you can track me for this and all of that. Even Facebook's, I can set my parameters on Facebook any way I like, but it's just not worth the time. I basically feel okay that I'm not doing anything I'm worried about they're going to misuse. And it's for an individual user, do we really want to waste the time doing things which would benefit us in this data area? And therefore, that's why these defaults have gotten so loose, is because there isn't much demand for it other than, Yale law review articles and people that are thinking more systemically than thinking about the way a customer would actually have to encounter a new regime.
Well, I think the default should be set towards privacy. And then it should be up to the companies then to say, here's why it's a benefit to you. For instance, when you come to our site, we remember your password. And for something like Facebook is the saying, listen, we're serving these ads to you. We know what rock and roll bands you like. We know what kind of clothes you like. Don't you want to see these ads? And so I could say, you know what, that's actually okay, but don't use that or information outside of Facebook, right? And or don't merge that information with other things about me, right? Just so I'm in control of of how that data is used. It's up to them. They say, oh, well, this is to your benefit. We're by knowing more about you, we're able to serve you results which you like more. But okay, prove it, right? So don't start that way and try to make me figure out how to get out of it. Start the other way, with privacy, and or even say, guess what? We're going to charge you a fee if we can't personalize. Okay. All right.
That's more straightforward.
Yeah. Then, like a lot of places now, you could buy out of ads. Mm-hmm. And it's, if they want to do that, they want to know that the audience will be smaller. There'll be a number of people who basically say, I'm out of here. Then that's fine. But I'm saying we have to move the default, because right now it's not transparent to people. People, are constantly, hearing about things that are exposed that shock them and saying, well, I didn't know my data was used for that. I didn't know they knew that about me. I didn't know they merged all these databases from this place and that place with my voter records, with stuff that comes from drug companies, right? With my search results. No, I mean, let us figure out how to open that up. So it really isn't something you can't use the site, or you have to figure out how to go backwards and protect yourself. It's more like what could benefit me by letting them use that information. I think, for something like a search engine, can be a compelling argument. If as long as that information isn't being abused, I'm saying, I don't cancel my search history on Google because it helps me out.
Mm-hmm. Well, in thinking about Amazon specifically and the hearing and the report, it seemed like the real point of the spear aimed at Amazon had to do with third-party sellers on the Amazon.com platform. And I heard Elizabeth Warren give a talk at South by Southwest last year, and she was so clear in saying if you have a platform, you shouldn't be able to play on it. And she used an analogy. If you are the umpire, you should not have a baseball team in the game. These two functions should be separate. And so it's a very simple, compelling argument. But when you think about Walmart has more first-party sales, I think they're up at about 15% compared to 1% on Amazon. And that's something that is really accepted. Would it make sense to have that clear a line going forward, that anybody in any industry, I suppose, you have to choose whether you're going to be running the platform or competing on it?
Well, that's a great question. I don't have an answer to that, but I know that take something that I've written about in the past, and I've always felt was as terrible anti-consumer practice of the cable companies. Now, the cable companies maybe now that like a lot of people rely on that copper wire, don't have the power they used to. But to this day, every big cable provider, or many of them, are like Comcast, also content providers that give access to their channels that others don't. That I always felt was something that violated what should be, to me, antitrust. It's unfair for them to say, well, if you were a news channel, we have our news channel. We own our news channel, and that's not going to be number one in our system. And, we're not even going to carry your channel. Or if we do, we're going to put it up to like channel 400 or something like that. And that doesn't seem right. So I'm always a big fan of saying you have to move. The distributor can't be competing with those whose content is being distributed. Remember the net neutrality argument, right? And that was lost. Right. Why were we okay with not having net neutrality, to letting internet service providers favor different content or content they own, and we're now criticizing Amazon for putting its batteries number one. But I think there's other things that, there's real criticisms here. And so these third-party providers at Amazon, they get buried unless they take out ads on Amazon. So in a way, Amazon is making them, not only giving them access to the platform, but really charges them in a way de facto, which doesn't seem right.
I keep being surprised by how many of these third-party sellers there are on Amazon. I think it's well over 1 million, and in their blog post they say it accounts for 1.1 million jobs of people that are selling on Amazon. And there was interesting history in that post at the Day One blog that in 1999 they initially had it separate, that the third-party sellers were one place and the Amazon stuff was another, and nobody liked it, and including the third-party sellers, because they kept being bypassed. Everybody'd head to the Amazon site. So it was like solving a problem and creating a whole new good thing at that point when the third-party sellers were visible on an equal basis on that site. And so Amazon's saying now, if this antitrust action were to succeed and they were forced to separate that out again, the ones that would suffer would be these third-party sellers that all of a sudden would be in a kind of a class 2 area compared to Amazon. And it made me wonder, they found some scary stories, people that were really pissed off at Amazon as third-party sellers. But if this was really going to be a threat that would disadvantage all of those companies or most of them, wouldn't you expect some kind of a lobbying effort on their behalf to say, whoa, this is not broken, On
whose behalf? On the third party?
Parties. Yeah. I mean,
well, they're not organized the way a big company like Amazon is, to act together. And, I agree. It's a complex problem. I think in a way, it's because the Google search engine has not performed as it used to, really. That causes these problems. We used to think that these internet-enabled vendors would reach people through Google, and other search engines, and that the best stuff would rise to the top. And Google itself, the search engine, is just not as effective. It's really been polluted by Google's own, advertising needs, and the 10 blue links are no longer what dominates the Google search engine. I just wrote about this in an afterword that I'm including in the paperback version of In the Plex, my Google book, which is coming out in February. It's amazing to compare what a Google search engine looked like 10 years ago and what results look like now, especially if you type in something, like the name of a hotel. To get the hotel website, you probably have to it's not going to be on the first page of your mobile device, but even on a computer, you have to go through a lot of other ads and non-organic results and organic results that aren't the hotel to get to it. And it used to be that Google's claim to fame was that the top organic result would be the thing you're looking at. So if I type Courtyard Marriott in Palo Alto, the website of the Courtyard Marriott in Palo Alto would be the number one result. Try to find it now. Yeah. You have to start digging for it, among tourist sites in Palo Alto and ads and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. And I think now over 60% of shopping searches begin at Amazon. They don't begin at Google anymore, so you can't find that mom and pop
right.
spot.
But the dream was that if I was making great face masks, and people love my face masks, the popularity of it would drive that up in the Google search engine, and people would find me. Now, in order to get seen, you got to pay these places to move your stuff up, and even then, it gets pretty difficult because the ads are super expensive, especially if you're selling something which is an absolute niche product.
Yeah. I look back at Brad Stone's book because I remembered that he found this memo, Amazon.love, that Bezos had written, I think about 9 years ago. There had been some antitrust controversy. And so he was thinking ahead about how Amazon could protect itself or strengthen itself. And it says he wondered why Microsoft's large base of users had never come out in any significant way to defend the company against its critics, and speculated that perhaps customers were simply not satisfied with its products. And
Microsoft, did you say?
Yeah, Bezos is wondering how come Microsoft's customers didn't come out and say, hey, and now Amazon, 80% of Americans have a favorable view of Amazon, and Bezos was saying, would Amazon continue to be viewed as innovative and value-creating, a company that existed to serve and delight its customers, or would it increasingly be seen as a monolith that merely transferred dollars out of the accounts of other companies and local communities into its own gilded coffers? So he's been thinking about this for about a decade, and
he is writing a sequel to that book that'll be out next year.
Yeah, when's it coming out?
I think it might be late next year.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine, and he's completing the book now. So
cool. Yeah. That's great. I can't wait. That's going to be good to see. Well, how well do you think Amazon's done in the past 10 years to sort of get ready for this battle, which it saw coming? Is it perceived as innovative and delighting customers, or is it seen just as run by the richest man in the world and somehow it's turned dark just because of the size? How do you think it enters this public arena around kind of an existential threat compared with how Microsoft was positioned when it was under attack?
Even more than Microsoft, as you mentioned, Amazon is viewed favorably, particularly in the last year during the pandemic. It's been a lifeline for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it is the problems we've been talking about with vendors aren't generally seen by the general public as giant problems. They're really not paying attention to the plight of small users, and the idea that Amazon might use the data it gets from seeing how those small vendors do to decide what products that they should create, makes a big ripple in the antitrust world, but it doesn't alarm people, who just want to order stuff and get it there on time. So I think that plays into that. I mean, that ultimately antitrust prosecutions have a political element, and people don't, the regulators, and especially the legislators, don't want to be seen as disempowering consumers and taking away things that consumers like. So I think in that sense, you could argue that the House majority report is betting that people are fed up with big tech. And maybe if you ask people, are you fed up with big tech? They might say yes. But then if you say, well, how about Amazon? They say, well, actually, I like Amazon, right? And Google, I use Google all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And even Facebook, which, among some quarters is the most vilified company on earth. People, have not been flocking, to depart Facebook. So I think we have to look to that to see what the results of this wave of antitrust activity is going to be. Again, I emphasize it's a loser to say, the whole point is we've got to regulate Facebook, we've got to regulate Google, we've got to regulate, Facebook and Amazon and Apple, and instead of saying people need more protection.
Yeah.
To me, that's a winner. People don't feel protected. And I think if you take it from that angle and then say to the companies, here's the protections we're giving to people, these are the new rules you have to follow, that would be the best course for all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to shift to talk a little bit about plain text. I think you started it earlier this year, maybe around March, your weekly email newsletter. At that time, I think it was a benefit of subscribing to Wired, and so I'm receiving it. I subscribe to Wired. Is that still the only way people can get it, or what's the structure vis-a-vis Wired now?
Yeah, actually, we started maybe even in the end of January the newsletter, and the idea is that we're going to build towards the model where only subscribers would get the newsletter. It's called plain text, and we sort of hooked them for a while. We'd leave it on the web. You'd be accessible on the web. And in part because of the pandemic, we let that ride. I think the key is that the most value you get of the newsletter is if you get it in your inbox, right, as opposed to finding it on the web. So we give people a discount if they subscribe through the newsletter. If you search for Steven Levy, Wired plain text, you'll see the newsletter, and you can subscribe. You get $5 for the first year. It's a come on. We're going to give you a year of not only the newsletter but the print version of the magazine and unlimited web. We have a paywall usually, and then after a year, we'll ask you to pay some more because we know you're going to like it so much. And we were going to stop printing the web version after Labor Day, but we still had some work to do to make sure that people who were subscribers who for some reason weren't on the newsletter list, because sometimes when people sign up to Wired, they opt out of getting newsletters. So we held off to that because we're developing a product where we can have things on the website that's accessible, through the paywall, the people in the paywall. So that's a larger movement. So sometime, I think it was supposed to be in the next few weeks, you wouldn't be able to find it, by hook or by crook unless you were a subscriber to Wired. But hey, why not spend the $5, get it every week in the newsletter.
Can you say how many subscribers you've attracted so far for the newsletter?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Wired has, I guess, kind of the high six figures, somewhere just south of 1 million subscribers.
Right.
You can look that up, and in theory, they all can get it. Actually, it's a lot of people just don't like to get emails. They opt out of that, right? So, hundreds of thousands. It's a six-figure number. They get that newsletter every Friday, and they depend on it. Then when I know that if it's late, people say, "Where is it?" And, when I actually took a couple weeks off this summer, I didn't want the newsletter to go dark. So I had colleagues fill in for me. They had fun doing the plain text thing. And for your listeners who haven't heard it, it's a fun thing. I do an essay to start it off. It's called The Plain View. And then I do this thing called Time Travel, where I go back into my archive, which goes back nearly 40 years, and try to find something that I've written in the past that has some relevance to
today's
what I'm
news.
writing about this week. And then I take a question from a reader, because Ask Me One Thing. It's sort of a slow-moving Ask Me Anything. And anyone can submit to me by just writing to mail@wired.com, use Ask Levy in the subject line, and ask me anything, and I'll try to answer one thing a week in the newsletter. Then I pick this week's Sign of the Apocalypse, the End Times Chronicles. And I actually started that before the pandemic. Like I knew it was End Times even before then. And then pick a few things that I've seen on Wired that I liked that week. And I hope it's a fun kind of newsletter and people welcome it.
It looks like it's fun. It's fun to read. It looks like it's fun to write. How much time are you spending, like 5 hours a week putting it together, or what sort of? Well,
it pretty much takes, it comes out on Friday, and I'll usually spend today. I'm going to, I really want to get in place. Usually on Wednesday, I'll spend a little time, and Thursday, write it up. And sometimes I'll even start it a little earlier. I'll do a more reported stuff than other weeks. Sometimes I'll just bounce off things. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote about the Apple event. So I don't think I'm going to write about this week's Apple event because too much Apple events. And but there's never a lack of things to write about.
Your Facebook book is priced on Kindle for $15. And when we talked either the last time or the time before, we were talking about ebook pricing, and the pace of ebook adoption has been a little slow. And I think you said, an ebook ought to be priced at maybe $5 or $10 at the most. And so when you sat down with the Blue Rider Press, the Penguin Random House imprint, and did you even get a chance to suggest to them that what price you'd like that Kindle copy to be instead of $15?
The answer is no. They never ask the author about that.
Not even you. I would think they get the lead technology writer here. Wouldn't he get a chance to say, "Hey guys, by the way, this would be sort of consistent with my take on this sector to price my book smartly"?
Well, when authors now wind up getting a say is well along in the book's process. So, the Facebook, the Inside Story, we came out in February. Next February, there'll be a paperback. Yeah. Right? The paperback, which I think you could pre-order. I don't know why you'd pre-order a paperback if you could buy the hardback for $15, but
right,
or the Kindle for $15. Like the hardback probably a little more. I would love to see some situation where if you buy the hardback and scan, a QR code, you can get the ebook for like $3 more.
That would be awesome. I would totally do that.
It's a big, thick book.
Yeah.
I'm reading right now Jonathan Alter's biography of Jimmy Carter. It's like a 700-page book. I'm not traveling, so I don't have to lug it around everywhere I go. But even just walk around the house, right? Sometimes I'd like to, pick up my phone and read a little extra more. Read a little more. So I would spring for $3 more to have an ebook version. And there are some things you can get the ebook for more, but it's generally not just a couple bucks more. So I'd like to see more of that. Sometimes they pair it with the audio, but sometimes, when books are in print for a long time, you can get the rights back. I have some books that are old enough that when I sold them, the digital rights weren't included, and I own the digital rights.
Like Insanely Great.
My book, Insanely Great, I read it for Audible. I own the audio, the ebook version, the Kindle version, and I actually put in a transcript of my interview with Steve Jobs.
Yes, that was great.
That I did. So that's like I'm the publisher. So another book I did, it was a true crime book in 1988. It's called The Unicorn Secret. It's a book about an amazing case in this Philadelphia guy who was Philadelphia's leading hippie who killed his girlfriend, and he was well connected with a lot of the people in the New Age, and he was a fellow at Harvard. Well, his girlfriend was in a trunk in his apartment. And so I wound up with the rights to that. And then this publisher called Open Road approached me, and they do very author favorable deals in ebooks. So, I get like a 50% royalty on that instead of the Amazon 70%, which I get on Insanely Great. and I own the audio rights. And Audible approached me recently and said, let's do an audiobook. And last week, poof, the audio book is published for the first time last week.
Sweet.
I used the fantastic narrator, L.J. Ganser, who read my Google book. They asked me who I wanted. So they paid one of the top narrators of audiobooks to read it. So you could now read or listen to the Unicorn Secret in audio. And so there's lots of options for authors with catalogs. Right now, the one book I have, which is not widely available, is a book I wrote called Artificial Life, which has a big following. When I was doing my Facebook book, I remember one person who normally doesn't talk to press says, I'm going to talk to you because artificial life changed my life.
Wow.
I got into technology because of this. And he was really excited to talk to me because of that. So I'm starting the process now with my agent of figuring out, how to get that into ebook. It's never been an ebook. And audio.
Wow. You sound like somebody that might be just about to switch to self-publishing.
Well, I mean, for Insanely Great, I am self-publishing it.
Yeah.
I had to, they wouldn't give me the cover, so I paid one of the designers at Wired to design a cover for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have a lot more freedom. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Anything I missed or that you'd like to emphasize or bring up briefly just before we go?
I think this is the reckoning for big tech. And the House report is just one element of that. But as you point out, we're getting a lot of value from it too. And sometimes because there is a lot to criticize, there's a lot of bad behavior. Just this week, Mark Zuckerberg decided that maybe it isn't a good idea to have Holocaust denial on Facebook. And that is dramatic because literally 2 years ago, he went to a podcast interview with Kara Swisher, and that was in his notes of something he wanted to bring up to demonstrate how Facebook operates, how it gives free expression to people. And, he brought it up. She didn't ask him about it. He had it in his notes as something he wanted to bring up to show how that works. And, when people heard it, they thought, that doesn't sound right, and he got a lot of criticism. So this is something that's evolving. And I wrote, when I did in my plain text newsletter a couple weeks ago, I was writing about the Facebook Oversight Board and this, group of critics called the Real Oversight Board. Can I point out that there is oversight in Facebook, not only from this oversight board that they're starting, but from legislators, from users who can delete Facebook, and from Facebook's own employees who are providing oversight that Mark Zuckerberg has to listen to. So, plenty to talk about, but I've been pleased in the last few months, since my book was published, and how much the current controversies of Facebook are handled in Facebook, the inside story. And, it was my intent that even though the people would say, how do you stop writing about it? Because, Facebook is so much in the news. And the whole point was to write something which sort of locks in the way Facebook operates. So when new developments happen, those who have read the book be able to understand them, contextualize it, and really get where the company's coming from.
Yeah, they've seen the map, and it helps them understand what's unfolding in real time.
Right.
Cool.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Len. It's always great to talk to you.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Before I sign off, I want to pass along a pretty cool tip I received from listener Maurice Sotiriou about a Kindle Unlimited deal, which I hadn't spotted until she flagged it for me. And what it is you can extend whatever your Kindle Unlimited reading is at this point, or start up a new one, and save up to 40%. So if you want to extend your KU subscription for 6 months, that would normally cost $59 $49.94. You can get it for $47.86. That's a 20% savings. Extending for 12 months would normally cost $119, and it's now $80.30, 33% off. I went for the 24-month extension. I'm really pretty devoted to Kindle Unlimited. I think I use it enough to make it pay for itself even at the $9.99 a month level. But if you were going to extend at the regular price for 24 months, that would be $239.76. And as it is, I paid $143.80, or 40% off. That extends my Kindle Unlimited subscription to March 17th, 2024, an act of faith on a number of levels. I'll have a link in the show notes to where you can go to get this deal for yourself, and thanks to Marie for sending that along. I'm not sure who our guest will be next week. I'd love to hear from the CEO of Remarkable in Norway, but if not, we'll come up with somebody that'll be fun to talk to. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to my show. Have a great day. Bye.